And now ABC is coming out, Disney ABC is coming out with a new remake of V, and in it the extraterrestrials that look like humans who are bringing a, quote, new order to the world. And the pamphlet in the movie is called Dawn of a New Day. I was said, wow, I cannot believe how overwhelmingly obvious this secret symbol is now becoming. And that's why I want to do this video on it.
But were you told more about the movie, more about, you know, where they're going with it? In other words, I'm assuming you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it yet. But I watched the other one so many times. And the other ones, if you remember in the original, the visitors, they were wonderful people. They were very gracious and charming. And then remember the lady who was in charge of the visitors, she was the highest ranking. She went into a room and pulled off her face, and it was a reptile alien.
Yes.
I personally, I brought David Icke to America. He was in America because I brought him here personally.
Yes.
And so I'm saying that I am totally convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, for myself, that there are such things as reptile aliens. Though I have never seen one, thank God, but I totally believe they are here. Not because of David Icke, not because of Crito Mutwa, who I love listening to, a wonderful, fascinating man. David Icke has done great stuff. But I believe there are reptile aliens here because of my own personal research. I have been in the company of at least 8 people over the past many years, 8 different people. Each one is extraordinarily well-grounded people. Airline pilot, one, with a major airlines, a very wealthy man in Las Vegas who buys and sells commercial hotels, buildings, etc. Extremely wealthy man. Christian, incidentally, very Christian man, but very, very wealthy, a very highly intelligent man, sat down and told me about his personal one-on-one with a reptile alien in which many others in his church were privy to see. That's a whole story in itself. That happened in Colorado. And then to have scientists and a young lady who was one of my favorite people in the world, a young lady called Nancy, who just blew me away. And on my radio show, I used to have a show. I've had 7 different radio shows in my life. I'd like to get back on radio and do my own show again. But I had a show on KPFK here in Los Angeles, FM station. And one night I had Nancy on. And Nancy just blew the audience away. She is so feminine, so incredibly charming and feminine girl, talking about stuff that will blow your mind. Her father was in the Air Force, her family was Air Force, but her father was in charge of project retrievables for the Air Force. The man who was in charge of going out wherever in the world, any extraterrestrial activity, he was in charge in the Air Force to go there first. And he was the boss. And she said, and the modus operandi was always the same. And I'll have to make you a copy of her. I got 2 2-hour interviews that will just knock you out. And you could tell this is a very charming girl, but telling you stuff that you're going to have to sit down to deal with. And she said her father, wherever they would go, she always lived on military bases. And she said, and always the method was the same. There was one phone in the house for the family, and then there was another phone which no one ever touched. You never used it. And when that phone would ring, no matter when, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, it doesn't matter. If that phone rang, her father had 10 minutes to be fully dressed with his briefcase and ready to go. And in 10 minutes, a car would pull up and nothing was said. No voices, no nothing was said. A knock on the door, he would walk out, he would have military escort him to the car, get in the car and drive off, and that's it. Nobody knows where he's gone, and nobody needs to know. And so she said, and many a night, they would get that phone ring. He would get up, dressed, briefcase, ready to go, and they would take him somewhere in the world where something has just happened, and the Air Force was sending him to see what just happened, and they're in charge. And she would tell me the things that her father, especially her mother, she said the father would never tell her anything when she was a child, but the mother would tell her later on in life. She told me an experience that just blew my mind about a reptile alien, and you really have to hear it from her. But she basically, the story, and it's so fascinating, I got to tell you. She said her father would never allow her to be left alone in the house ever. When he would go off during the day, they live on base. They live on base. Doesn't matter. When he would leave the house, immediately military would come and guard all four corners of the property. They would sit there in cars and guard while he's gone. Anywhere. If he went to the market or whatever, they would be guarding the house. And he would never allow her to stay at home by herself. And so she said one night, and you'll hear this interview, she said one night, it wasn't on base, they were here in Los Angeles somewhere, and she said that her mom and dad were going next door to a party next door, and she asked her dad if she could stay, and she was like 13, 14 years old, and he said no, absolutely not. So she talked to her mother, and the mother talked to the father, and got him to agree that she could stay home. And so she said, so for the first time in her life, she was actually going to be alone in the house by herself. And she said, so she was in a bedroom, she said, combing her hair, and she had a mirror that she could see her closet. And the closet had French doors. And she said they were closed, partially closed, and it wasn't too well lit in the room. She said she was combing her hair, looking at the closet door, and all of a sudden the closet door opened up, and a reptile alien stepped out. And she said he had to bend down to get under the header, and he stood up. She said it was a full-grown man, extremely muscular, but it was a reptile body, reptile alien head. And she said this thing looked at me, and I'm looking at it in the mirror. And she said he started moving toward me without moving his legs. He was just floating toward her, slowly. And she said, I felt like it was like coming up on a fly. He was, grab you quick. And she said she jumped up and screamed and ran down the hallway, ran into the bathroom, locked the door, opened the window, and started screaming. Of course, everybody in the neighborhood heard. She said, and when I heard, and this reptile alien, she said, came down the hallway, and I could feel that him walking because he was so heavy. And he was scraping on the door, growling like a dinosaur growl, scraping on the door. And she said then when her father and the neighbors come running up, they opened the door. When they come running up, they were yelling outside. This reptile alien ran back down the hallway into her bedroom and disappeared. She said when her father came in, the bathroom door was just ripped, and obviously the father said he was not going to hurt her, but it was a message. And he said, that's why I never wanted her to stay alone, because these aliens have told us, the Air Force, that you keep poking your nose into our business. Every time something happens, you come out and poke your nose. So we just want you to know, the next time something happens and you poke your nose into our business, while you're out here poking your nose into our business, some of us are going to come visit your daughter. So you need to stay home and stay out of our business. And so he said, so that's why they always had military around anytime he left. And so when she was telling me this story about other reptile aliens, and of course I've heard it from so many legitimately important people, I have to believe that there is something to this story. I have personally not seen one, but I don't want to. But I've seen enough to know that there are life forms on this earth which are not from here. I've already seen too much to know that. My experiences have been extraordinary, as I said. 36 major experiences I've had in my life where I've dealt with other world phenomena. Wow. I cannot believe how overwhelmingly obvious this secret symbol is now becoming. And that's why I want to do this video on it.
But were you told more about the movie, more about, you know, where they're going with it? In other words, I'm assuming you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it yet. But I watched the other ones so many times. And the other ones, if you remember the original, the visitors, they were wonderful people. They were very gracious and charming. And then remember the lady who was in charge of the visitors, she was the highest ranking. She went into a room and pulled off her face and it was a reptile alien.
Yes.
I personally, I brought David Icke to America. He was in America because I brought him here personally.
Yes.
And so I'm saying that I am totally convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, for myself, that there are, and now ABC is coming out, Disney ABC is coming out with a new remake of V, and in it the extraterrestrials that look like humans who are bringing a, quote, new order to the world. And the pamphlet in the movie is called Dawn of a New Day. I will say such things as reptile aliens. Though I have never seen one, thank God, but I totally believe they are here. Not because of David Icke, not because of Krito Mutwa, who I love listening to, a wonderful, fascinating man. David Icke has done great stuff. But I believe